You're tuned into the Counterflow Podcast, home of dissident voices,
unapproved opinions.
But you gotta get ready.
You ready?
Now here's your host
and humble narrator,
Buck Johnson. Let's go.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast. I am still your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, coming to you out of Lockhart, Texas. Father John Peck is back with us today. I don't always get into the discussion of the masculinity crisis or the problems that feminism has created and issues with modern femininity and the lack of masculinity and that sort of thing. I happened to come across this discussion just organically. We had Father John Peck on the Zoom session for our Patreon supporters group. And I just asked him sort of randomly, to be honest, what's the Orthodox definition, let's say, of masculinity? And then we went into the Orthodox version of femininity. And so emotional for a lot of people. It was very good. And so it led me to think, let's just do an episode on that with Father John Peck, because that was such a compelling segment of our Zoom call. And it led me to think too, in this, you'll hear me tease next week's guest because she's quite good on this. So maybe a couple of episodes in a row on this sort of thing. I don't want to weigh you down with it because it is sort of trendy to talk about elsewhere. But I think you'll find a different, maybe a better, maybe more true perspective on masculinity and femininity in this episode. At least I hope so. That's why we did this. I love having Father John Peck on the show. Let's get him on right now. Father John Peck, it's an honor to have you back on the show, sir. How are you?
I'm good. Happy to see you, Buck, and thanks for inviting me back. I know when you're always desperate for guests, I count on you asking me over. So thanks for that.
So for the people listening, this should be a teaser for them to join the Patreon group if they have not done so. But you were our guest at the last supporter group, and this wasn't even a planned discussion as far as the topic that we're bringing up today. But within that chat with the listeners, I said, could you define Orthodox could you define masculinity from an Orthodox perspective? And then we did femininity. And I had people writing me, that was amazing. And it was so good to me as well. I thought, well, let's get you on an actual episode to discuss this. And note to the people listening, I'm just now getting over a cold. So please forgive if I sniffle. I've got a mute button. So if it looks to you, if you're watching this, like I'm having a conniption fit, but you don't hear anything, it's because I'm muting my coughing.
Buck is not spazzing out. No, he's coughing.
Right. All right. Well, real quick, people should know this, and I kind of hate doing this to reoccurring guests, but there's always new listeners, especially I think maybe for this topic. It's a topic people search, so it could pop up in algorithms. Really quick, give an intro of who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into it.
I'm Father John Peck. I'm the Archpriest in charge of All Saints of North America Orthodox Church in Sun City, Phoenix, Arizona. I've been very, very happily married for over 40 years. I have 3 sons. I have 12, soon to be 13 grandchildren. And I run the Great Martyr Femia Online Theological Academy to train young men who want to be deacons. Some of them go on to the priesthood. We try to give them what formation we can. It's not a seminary, but it does seem to help those who are trying to get along. And my church has developed 4 satellite missions, which are all very active here in Arizona. One was the 5th one was closed in Mexico. It's since been taken over by the Antiochians. During COVID, I was not able to get out there. So we're very, very happy that the Antiochian church was able to bring them under their wing. And it's a viable mission. So, yeah, and I occasionally sleep also. So.
Yeah, priests are so busy, and you always have so many kids, most of the ones I know. And it's like you have real children, spiritual children, parishes. So I appreciate you giving us this time. And you mentioned, I don't know if we were offline or in the supporter chat that we did. Finally, there's some feminine energy introduced into your giant family. You have one granddaughter at this point?
I have three.
Okay.
But the first one was born 5 years ago, and she was the first girl in the Peck family in 50 years. And the girls are all super girly. Pink, purple, unicorns, rainbows. I mean, they came out of the womb wanting feminine stuff. So don't let anybody tell you that gender is a social construct. Believe me, boys are boys and girls are girls, and they certainly are whoever they are themselves. But these girls couldn't be more girly. They're always twirling and giggling and doing girly stuff. So I grew up with sisters, but I did not have any girls in my offspring. So it's a new lesson to learn, is how to deal with these little girls and bring them up as young Christian women. We'll see how it goes, you know.
As you raised your boys, and now maybe even relative to spiritual sons that you have in your parishes, has it been different as far as what men are subjected to, or is it more of the same in a different cloaked, disguise, or how has that changed?
Now compared to raising my sons?
Yes. Do you see a difference?
Yeah, I do see a difference. I think parents today are sadly much more confused, much less prepared to be parents. That is, they want to have children, but they don't want to be parents. The pendulum is starting to swing the other way, thank God. But it's by and large, just as a lot of husbands don't know how to husband, and a lot of wives don't want to be wives. They want to be married, but they don't want to be wives. The parents, I think, are still struggling to figure out what parenting is. Partly because I think there was a lot of confusion in the 60s and 70s with the sexual revolution, and it gave us a generation of what I have to call terrible mothers. It gave us a generation of terrible mothers and fathers who were more confused than they had been in the past, to be sure. And that's led to a lot of confusion, lowers the birth rate. People aren't sure they want to have children. But I don't want a child being the center of my life. I don't want a child taking up all my resources and all my time. I can't do whatever I want. They'll say the same, but these are the same people that'll tell you that they're pet parents. You know, I'm just like a parent to you with my little doggy, the pug here. Said, no, I can't leave my 6-month-old alone all day. You can leave, Charlie alone all day, and he's happy to see you and everything, but it's not the same as being a pet owner is not the same as parenting. And I think there's a lot of this confusion. It's a confused age,
It is.
So we try to deal with the very basics when we're talking to a young man. Don't laugh, but I told my boys when they were young that girls had cooties, and if you got their cooties, you had to marry them. I never stopped telling them that, by the way. They did get married, and all are happily married, thank God. But now I tell my grandsons that. And same with granddaughters. Boys have cooties. Don't touch them. If you catch their cooties, you have to marry them. So I started with that. I'm not recommending that, obviously, but it was something that we did. And we tried to teach the boys to be gentlemen. Open the door for a person doesn't mean just crack the door open. It means swing it open so the person can walk straight through without hindrance, thinking in advance, thinking in anticipation of problems to come, of obstacles that have to be removed, things like that. I told my boys that your true friends show up on moving day when nobody shows up. So very often we would go and we would help somebody unload or load their moving truck, and we were sometimes the only ones. I remember particularly, we showed up late. I told a guy and his wife, I said, we'll be there, but it's not going to be till later in the afternoon. And they had a 28-foot truck, and it was packed to the gills. And they'd only been married like 6 years. Where they got all this stuff, I don't know. But we showed up. They had unloaded one thing, a dryer, and they'd been arguing over where to put the dryer for 2 hours. So I told them, and this is kind of our rule, we will unload the truck. We will touch everything once. Okay? We will pick it up and we will set it down. Once we set it down, you can tell us wherever you want it, we'll put it. But once it's down, we are not touching it again. It's stay out of the way. And we unloaded the truck in an hour.
Oh, wow.
And, some things went in the attic, some went in the basement, a ton of things went in the living room because they were completely unprepared to figure out where things were going. But it was done. The job was done. Now, don't get me wrong. We don't like moving, but we know that people need help moving, and it's only your real friends that show up on moving day, or the brothers who are terrible to you, but they show up on moving day. So that's little things like that. I tried to tell them, look, I can't control what other people do. That seems very obvious in the church. I can't control what any of us do. I said, but I'll tell you what I learned from my dad, and I learned from your grandpa, your great grandpa, is in our family, we take care of things. That's it. And they heard that. They saw us acting on that. And as a result, they've picked that up, and they think in advance. They know whether or not they can help somebody, and they try to help out. Now, we're not starting a moving company because we don't like moving. And we move as a 4-letter word,
Mm-hmm.
But all the time, trying to speak intelligently about responsibility, trying to speak intelligently about, what was man created to do? He's created to tend a garden. Okay, that means to put things in order. That means to keep it neat and tidy, to make sure that it's being as fruitful as possible. A man's job is that he has to anticipate provision. He's got to provide for his household, and he's got to make sure that he understands a way to do it without the need of want. Making sure that to provide and protect is the principal father's job. And my dad told me something very interesting on my wedding day, my dad was, he often said things that were very wise. And I look back, he said, now I want to tell you, when you become a husband, you're not just the father of your children, you're the father of the family. He says, and you need to think about that. You need to think about what that means. That's all he said. But later on, I became familiar with the historical idea of what a paterfamilias was, the father of the family in the Roman household. He was not just the father of his children and of his wife. His household contained many people, grandparents, great uncles, cousins, nephews, nieces, servants, slaves, sometimes neighbors, all in a single household. He was the father of that household. When we see in the Bible that the apostles baptized whole households, people often think, they baptized a nuclear family or a husband and wife. No, they baptized probably 16 to 20 people at a time, maybe many more, depending on the economic condition of the people they were baptizing. So I think people have to think in terms of biblical household, not nuclear family. It's a very 1960s way to look at a traditional family, and I frankly think it's false.
You want to hang out on September 6th at a fantastic conference in Stafford, Virginia? You want to join me? please come to our 3rd annual Ludwell Orthodox Fellowship Conference in Stafford, Virginia, Saturday, September 6th. This conference is titled The Cradle and the Crucible, Ludwell's Virginia through War and Revolution and the Future of Orthodoxy in the South and in America. And now let me tell you about this lineup. Metropolitan Jonah, Father Paul Sears, Father Gabriel Weller, my spiritual father, Father Turbo Qualls, my priest, Father Ignatius Lozano. I'm going to be doing a Counterflow Live there, kind of the same situation I do as you guys watch. It'll be a Counterflow Live interview with Proto-Deacon Brian Patrick Mitchell. Oh, check this out. Jay Dyer's going to be there. You know that guy? Jay Dyer will be there. Jim Jatris, Richard Hines, and our friend Rebecca Dillingham, aka Dissident Mama. She will be there too. I will link to this in the show notes page. If you're watching on the YouTube version, you can see our flyer. Go to southernorthodox.org to get tickets to this conference, and we will see you there. Think about this. At Counterflow Live, we've got Jay Dyer, we've got Father Turbo, we've got Jim Jatris, we've got Metropolitan Jonah, Father Ignatius. Does it get any better than that? I don't think so. See you guys in Virginia.
I think that we're always trying to put limits on what the lowest common denominator is, the minimalism. You know, the nuclear family is something that everybody needs. Well, not everybody has a nuclear family. It doesn't mean they don't have a family, but it's led to the idea that you have to have your own nuclear family separate from everybody else's nuclear family, and it's very destructive. 18-year-olds leaving the house. No way to make money other than at McDonald's or some other minimum wage job. And society is saying, what, don't you own your own car? Don't you own your own house? You're 18, you're an adult. How do you not have these things already? Well, because young men have no value. They don't produce anything. They're learning a trade or a profession. They're going to be at the peak of that in 15 years. But for some reason, society has told us that by the age of 22, if you're not on your own with a house and a car, you are a loser. And of course, none of that is true. Those expectations are false and ridiculous. It's not since the 40s and 50s have men been able to work a very, very humble job and afford a car and a house by themselves. Today, nobody can afford anything. Even if you get an extra 10 or 20 grand as a down payment from your parents, it's not enough. It's not enough anymore. Hence tiny houses, hence living in trailers, hence natural construction things, making homes out of brick or adobe or a cob or just out of logs. And obviously it's a lot of work, but it's cheap. And when you're done, you might have a very small house, but you don't owe anything. And it keeps the rain out just as well. So see, people creatively solve these problems that society continues to put obstacles in front of. And I think we're seeing a lot of it. When I was homeschooling back in Michigan, before I went to seminary, there were probably less than 30,000 homeschoolers in the whole country. And they were getting a bad rap, you know. What about socialization? Your poor children, they're not going to know anything, blah, 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 blah. I even had an argument with it with my bishop at that time. And I want to give him credit. He share this with your audience. We were both having a terrible day. And you did have terrible days sometimes at that time at St. Herman Seminary. There was a lot of people that were trying to destroy the administration. They made it almost impossible to do any sort of real advancement in the studies. And it was just a time of spiritual attack and misery. And he was having a rotten day and I was having a rotten day. And he came up and he mouthed off to me. It's not a way to talk to a bishop, of course. But he said something about homeschooling. And I was on my last nerve, and we stood face to face, nose to nose, yelling at each other for about 5 minutes. And I was explaining that school socialization doesn't mean anything people don't get socialized well by their peers. Their peers are idiots. And in terms of socialization, homeschoolers tend to socialize with many more of their neighbors, which are a variety of different levels of education and maturity. And that makes them much, much more socially adept. So we parted company. He went his way. I went mine. I went into my apartment. I told my wife, well, that's it. I'm never going to be ordained. Let's just pack up and go. And the bishop came by about an hour later and apologized. He said, I've never heard anybody talk about homeschooling the way that you had. I was only familiar with exceptionally poor examples of it. Well, today, it's not 37,000 people in the entire country. It's 3.7 million people who are homeschooling today. That's more than 1/10 of our population. I think that's right. That's a lot of homeschoolers. And since they spend less money and get far more out of it, the literacy rate for homeschoolers is 99%.
Yeah, right.
The literacy rate for public school is 40% on a good day. So you can't teach everything, but you certainly do make sure your children know how to do a few things. And as I said, the pendulum is swinging the other way now. People understand that the state really does not have your best interests in mind. The public schools consider the children to belong to them and not to the parents. And parents are like, I don't need that. I don't need to fight with a teacher over what I consider is appropriate or over what they consider is appropriate. I don't care what they think is appropriate. It's worked out very, very well. And I'm very sorry to say that my daughters-in-law both have had a terrible experience. They were preparing to send my grandchildren to the traditional schools, literally Liberty Traditional School, Washington Traditional School, that they themselves had attended not so long ago. And just talking to the new teachers made it very, very clear. These teachers were not going to listen to parents. These teachers were cultural Marxists, if not actual Marxists, and were throwing away the tradition of a traditional school. It was discarded out of hand. No discussion, no polling of parents. It was just done, and we learned the hard way. It's not worth hoping somebody there gets it right. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not against all public school teachers. I have many friends who are public school teachers, and I know they labor very hard. But I also know that many of them don't fight against a lot of these things. I know they have to pick their fights. I totally get that. But now you're thinking like a parent. We have to pick our fights too. We don't want to fight with everybody. So we're not going to fight with teachers. We're just not going to do it. And as a result, we're able to give our children the science education, the literature and arts education, and the Christian education we want. And it's a big sacrifice. Nobody wants to have to do everything themselves. And when you have to do it, it's a lot of work. But the formation for the child is what's important. You want them to try to love learning, or at least love what they're studying, and instead of hating it and getting math anxiety, which I labor very hard to make sure my children don't have math anxiety. It only takes one crappy math teacher to ruin that.
Yes.
I found that the hard way, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But this is what today's men and women, young men and women, are up against. And it's, like I said, it's swinging the other way, because I think in many ways people realize it's not only not tenable, it never was. And certainly in today's, the way things are today, it's set up not to work. It's set up specifically for failure.
I've stayed away from the topic of masculinity for sort of on purpose for a while because there's so much, I call it like low frequency noise, and it's sort of a trendy topic online and with, this manosphere versus trad women or feminism. And there's so much, I hate this term because it feels like a propagandistic term, but misinformation out there. And really, until I heard you discussing it in our Zoom session, I don't know that I had thought about covering it too much. And it was so good how you broke it down. That's why I wanted to bring you on. So first, I guess let's break down define or just talk about masculinity from an Orthodox Christian perspective.
Well, first, let's talk about let's start apophatically. Let's start by saying what it isn't.
Yes.
Masculinity is not being macho. Being macho is a defense mechanism for an insecure male. Okay? Beating your chest and pretending to be an alpha male, if there is such a thing. I don't think there is. I think is an example of somebody that's very insecure. In the same sense that if you go to the gym, don't get me wrong, it's not a criticism of people who go to the gym. I used to go to the gym on a regular basis, and I would like to get back to it. But you don't want to be one of those people that goes to the gym because you've got problems you ain't solving. You've got body dysphoria issues. You've got self-esteem issues that you are not solving. What you're trying to do is make up for them. And what happens is, unfortunately, you end up becoming a slave to your body. The gym bunnies, they all go into the gym and do their thing and their TikTok videos and everything. You got to stay out of the way of that thing. When I go to the gym, I'm usually there for 45 minutes. Now you think, well, what can you do in 45 minutes? I assure you,
yes.
At the end of 45 minutes, I was spent completely. There was nothing left. I could barely walk out the door. And I lifted more weight in that time than the guys in the spotting rack doing curls for girls for 2 or 3 hours. I don't have time when I'm at the gym to fool around with somebody that's getting in the way, or who I'm getting in the way of when I'm just trying to do 4 exercises. But I'm doing them very seriously, very intently, and then I'm done. And I'm out, and I've got to shower up and get ready for the rest of my day. So there's a lot of ways to counterfeit true masculinity, and there's a lot of ways to misrepresent it. And I think because it's not very well understood, it's an easy straw man for the enemies of, let's just say, human unity.
Mm-hmm.
Human unity begins with husbands and wives, with couples, with friends, with families. And it, like all unity, it's easy to break up, so it's got to be protected. So I would start, of course, with the man of all men, our Lord Jesus Christ. Jesus is not some anemic milquetoast guy that stands around preaching about being nice. I don't ever remember Jesus preaching about being nice.
Right.
That's actually one of my first sermons as a priest got me in trouble because I said Jesus wasn't a nice person. He was actually ferocious and uncompromising. He was good, but he wasn't what we would call a nice person in any sense of the word. He certainly went out of his way to be impolite on many occasions. And what we might say, well, that wasn't necessary. You didn't have to do it in that way. Priests are often told this, especially when we have to give a prophetic word. We have to take a prophetic action. And nobody likes that. Nobody wants a priest to do that. Because a priest is supposed to be a tamed man. When people think of priests, they are not thinking of Orthodox clergy generally. They're thinking of thin, shaved, guys in dog collars, the little tab collar, black suit, anemic, and kind of milquetoast. You know, he's not dangerous to anybody. He's not a threat to anybody. One of my favorite memes, and I think I mentioned this, is during the Patreon thing, is that somebody said, well, if the only reason you're not doing bad things is because you think you're going to get in trouble, then you're not a good person. You're just a psychopath on a leash. To which the answer is, yes, that's right. We're psychopaths on a leash. Thank God we have the leash. We know who we are. You have no idea how much danger you could be in.
We've got a new sponsor. It is Perfect Spiral Capital. This is the infinity banking concept. Break free from the system. Perfect Spiral Capital helps you build wealth on your terms outside of the control of the corporate banking cartel and the state-manipulated markets. Invest like a dissident, a true dissident. Take ownership of your financial future with strategies designed for those who refuse to be cogs in the machine. No handouts, no bailouts, just real results. Opt out, build wealth. The state inflates your savings away while Wall Street rigs the game. You guys know this. Perfect Spiral Capital helps you stack real assets and create lasting independence. Go to perfectspiralcapital.com/counterflow and get a special offer for fans of this show. Again, that's perfectspiralcapital.com/counterflow.
If you're not, again, I don't want to misrepresent this, but if you're not capable of danger, you're not virtuous, you're harmless. A virtuous man, and by the way, the word virtue means what makes a man, literally, from the Latin word. But if you're not capable of doing harm, if you're not capable of real danger, then there's no virtue in you. A good man is a terrible man under control. A man who realizes, and I think Jordan Peterson said it beautifully, he said, how in the world did Hitler rise to power? How did Mussolini and Saddam and all these others rise to power? Well, because there's a little bit of Hitler in everybody. And to which he says, more than a little. There's more than a little of those men in us. There's more than a little evil in us. And until people are willing to acknowledge that, until they're willing to acknowledge the monster inside, they're not dealing with real masculinity. They're not understanding what it really is. Now, our Lord is the perfect example, in my opinion. He's a man who was completely under control. He was not tame in any sense of the word. He flipped tables. He yelled at people. He grabbed a whip and started whacking people with it. He called the religious leaders vipers, whitewashed tombs, in front of everybody, guaranteeing his death, basically. Totally fearless. And when he was finally arrested, what did he say? Oh, no, don't take me, they're dragging away, kicking and screaming. He stood up and said, look, what cowards you are. I was in the temple every day. I was in the temple every day. There I was, and you come out to me at night alone in the dark like a skulking thief. Let these others go. And he walked right out between the spears. Yeah, he wasn't afraid of anything. He was a man, and he was capable of destroying them all. Our Lord is a manly man. It's hard to match up with his manliness because he was completely under control. He was completely under the power of the Spirit. He was completely untamed, but at the same time, very, very good, very virtuous. And he had the will of God before his eyes constantly and entirely. And he never begged, borrowed, or steal, even for attention. He never spared anyone when they asked him a question. He always told the truth. And no good deed goes unpunished. It's very hard for people to tell the truth to these, even to try to tell it in love, because you feel like you need to spare their feelings when in fact you're just sparing your own feelings. And those things have to be said, unfortunately. Now, the men do hard things. Men, some of these banister programs are hilarious. They and I don't have time to watch a lot of them, but people forward things to me from time to time, and I try to look at what they send me, but sometimes I see a couple of guys sitting around a table, and there's a bunch of women, and they're TikTok women, I suppose, because they're not dressed very modestly, and to be honest, they're not even dressed attractively, But something will happen, and everybody will stand up because there's an alert. There might be danger. The men stand up. The women run and hide behind the men. I said, okay, you know what? This is nature. This is nature. Women know that they're not as strong as men. Even armed women, unless they're standing in front of their children, they're going to hide behind a man. It's okay. That's natural. That's how it should be. And because we don't protect our women because they're weak. We protect them because they're valuable. They have real value. And this is another thing that a man does. He protects, and he anticipates having to protect, and he provides, and he has to anticipate what it takes to provide. Women who trying to feed women do not understand men at all, and I'm telling you, even women who understand a modicum of what men are like do not understand men very well at all. At all. The men are very simple creatures. You can make a man very happy just by bringing him a sandwich. As dumb as it sounds, as dumb as that sounds, that is absolutely universally true. The guys are not always after or interested in what women assume men have to be interested in. I do see the videos. Men only want one thing, and a guy cuts away from the girl and shows her, a speedboat or some crazy thing happening. Yeah, that's much closer to the truth. Much closer to the truth. Women don't understand that because where a man might, this is another good example. Somebody did a study, and forgive me, I normally remember where these studies come from, but this was sent to me and I didn't memorize it. And they had these men and women talking about different things, and then they isolated them and they set them aside for about 20 minutes, and then they came to the men and women separately, individually, and said, in that 20 minutes since the gathering, what were you thinking about? And for the men, yeah, it was I was thinking about this, I was thinking about that, I was thinking about a sandwich, I was thinking about my motorcycle, I was thinking about going fishing, I was thinking about the Roman Empire. Everybody has a different answer, right? Yeah.
Right.
That's another one my wife is astonished by, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And the women universally were thinking the same thing. They were reviewing conversations.
Yes.
Buck, you're a podcaster. You probably review more conversations in your head than any other profession. How often do you actually review conversations in your head? Never.
Not as much as women. This example you just said is, I'm thinking about multiple times this sort of things happen, and it's, you meet back with the female, and she's like, "So have you thought about what we talked about?" And I feel bad, it's almost that thing where you get into lying to protect their feelings, but they're really protecting your own, and you want to say yeah, a little bit, and it's like, no.
I'm not. By the way, I'm not mocking women here.
No,
at all. Because
this is just reality.
It is the reality of it. Women are a closed set psyche. That is, the reason women are safe when they are in adolescence is because they run in big groups, and men are unfortunately, even a guy who just wants to talk to a girl, he's acting like a predator. He's trying to see if he can pick her off from the group and talk to her privately. Just like finding the weak one among the zebras before they all run away. This difference between men and women, it's completely endemic. It only changes when women unnaturally isolate themselves from each other. It's not a natural thing for them. There's safety in their numbers, even though they gossip and talk to each other and about each other and everything. But still, there's safety in that group. We see it in elementary school playgrounds. We see it in high school. See it in college. You see it everywhere. The only place you don't see it right now as much is the workplace, because the workplace is a giant amalgamation of conflicting social rules that nobody is able to navigate and have not been able to safely navigate since the 80s, for sure. So, men, very simple. We're not thinking constantly about when we're not thinking about conversations at all. We're thinking about the things that have interest to us, or as our mind goes from one interesting thing to the next interesting thing, that's what we're thinking about. Now, women are very different. The image for a femininity for a woman is the church. It's the Virgin Mary. It's the female saints. And if you'll pardon me, it's also the little girl, the toddler, the perfect image of femininity. As I mentioned this during our Patreon conversation, when a little girl puts on a dress, the first thing she does in it is she twirls in it. She twirls, and that's a way of saying, "Look at me, see me, look at me, look what I'm doing, look how pretty this is." Women bring beauty to everything they do until they decide to do the opposite, to take beauty out. That's what unfortunately lesbianism has wrought. Gender confusion, transgenderism. It's and even homosexual guys, they say, "Well, I'm a woman on the inside." Really? Because the way you act and talk is not. You don't act and talk like a woman. You act and talk like a parody of a woman.
Yes.
Okay. A gay guy. If somebody imitates a gay guy, nobody pretends. Oh, you're imitating a woman. Nobody thinks that. Nobody understands that. And drag is the perfect example. It's all parody. It's all exaggerated. Sports Illustrated does not put drag queens on the front cover of their magazine for a reason. Those aren't women. They don't look like women. They don't act like women. They don't talk like women. And as many of the women and my wife has said, yeah, guess what? Girls know. Girls know girls. And we know when we're not talking to a girl. We know it for sure. One of the frustrating things is they go into makeup stores now and there's gay guys giving them advice on makeup.
Yes.
They don't want that. Well, he's really a good expert in it. He may be. That means he's a good artist.
Yes.
Who cares? When guys want a massage, they don't want a big hairy guy named Bruno giving him a massage usually. We're a little bit more modest when it comes to stuff like that. Now, I'm speaking in generalities, of course, but these are things that are necessary. I told the story, with your permission, I'll tell it again.
Please
when I was
do.
a young priest, and I was dressed like this, except I had my silver cross, not my gold one. And I was just standing outside the food court at a mall while my wife went to the bathroom. And while I was standing there, a girl came up to me and said, "Excuse me, can I get my picture taken with you?" And I turned around, and she has bright pink hair, short. She's got like 30 piercings. She's wearing black leather. She's got tattoos. Everything about her is screaming, "Notice me." This girl had to be invisible to the people who she loved because she was desperately in every way, she was saying, see me, look at me. And so I put my arm around her and I said, my wife came, I said, honey, take our picture. And suddenly I'm surrounded by 15 other girls, the same kind of girl. Obviously there is a reason that priests dress like men, look like men. We don't shave our beards, right? A cassock, although we can joke at it by being a dress, it's not a feminine garment. It's a male's garment. It's a man's garment. You say, well, men don't wear skirts. Yeah, well, tell the Scots that. They wear kilts, and a man in a kilt is a man and a half. These girls sat with me for some time, just asking questions and just being seen. Just looking at them when I was talking to them. And luckily, my wife understood exactly what was happening. She wasn't weird or jealous about it or anything. She understood what was happening. You know why? Because she had a good father. She had a father that told her this incredible thing that has kept her going her whole life. I love you. I love you. And there was no question in her mind that her father looked at her and saw a person of great, precious value. All those girls at the mall that day, that is exactly what they had not received. And I wasn't even very smart back then. Even I perceived that instantly. They just wanted to be seen because they're beautiful and they bring beauty to everything in their life. They're so distorted because they're trying desperately to not be invisible to the people who were supposed to be acknowledging their beauty, welcoming that beauty into their life. When a woman makes a man a sandwich, pie, whatever, that's a beautiful thing. That's a form of beauty. She's doing a beautiful thing. The Proverbs 21 woman is a woman who runs the household, but she takes care of it with beauty. Everything is apportioned properly. She's making sure all the servants have everything that they need. Everyone's taken care of. That's a person who on the inside is bringing great beauty to their lives, great proportion and symmetry and joy. People always think that beauty is only visual. Well, you can say, well, that's beautiful music, of course. They never think that's a beautiful temperature or that's a beautiful feeling, something tactile. We have other words for it, but what we're doing is we're adding to beauty. Everybody recognizes beauty. Everybody recognizes beauty. Everybody appreciates beauty when they see it. That's why one of my big complaints about architects and engineers is I look at modern buildings and I say, why do you hate people?
Yes.
Why do artists today hate people? It's the only explanation for the garbage that we're forced to look at and live in and interact around every day. As I said, back in the early 1900s, they built a post office. It was made out of stone. It was beautifully done, beautiful work. Today, it's steel and glass, and they tear it down in 20 years to make another one. There's nothing beautiful. Oh, yes, it's beautiful in its own way. It's sleek. It's this, it's that. So, yeah, listen, anytime a musician says to me, you need to let go of your preconceived notions about what good music is. Okay, that's like an artist who's done a horrible job saying artistic license.
Yes.
Listen, buddy, if you have to claim artistic license, then you are a crappy artist.
Yes. Yeah.
You're not producing beauty. In fact, that's the job of the artist, by the way.
Yes.
The job of the artist is to create beauty out of pain. That's the job of the artist. That's the job of the musician. That's the job of the poet. To create beauty out of pain. Now, unfortunately, of course, it can be derailed. Music can be co-opted and become something ugly, gross, something that is diabolical, divisive, and just grotesque. And often today it is, but that's what an artist does, and that's what many women do. This is what's so important about women. Women love beauty. Women want to make things more beautiful everywhere. And women suffer in ways that men don't. Sometimes it's their own nature, which they know. I wish I wasn't like this. I wish I didn't have my time of the month. It makes me crazy. But they turn that suffering into beauty, and then they bring that beauty into the lives of others, especially the others that they're the most intimate with or whom they share the most with. They bring that beauty into a life, and it transforms that life. As I said, I'm within the mark. I'm convinced I'm within the mark when I say, if it was up to me, I would be just as happy living in a cave, eating off a dirt floor, raw meat over a fire. I can live that way. But you know who can't? My wife. She demands plumbing. She demands beauty. She demands comfort. And she's not a hedonist. She has standards that she's not going to dip below. And that brings beauty and comfort to the rest of our household. She's got standards that are pretty high. And she makes me a better man as a result, because I can't just say, hey, it's all the same. What's the big deal? We're still eating meat. What's the problem with the dirt floor? There's not even a discussion. If I had that conversation with her, she would literally just walk out of the room. And she will have won the argument, because I'm not eating that. I'm not cooking that. We're not doing that. And this discussion doesn't even exist. So I work extra hard to make sure that her standards are met, because she treats me like a king in my own house. And that's the way it should be. Every man, it doesn't have to be treated like royalty, but he does have to be treated like the king of his house. And when that happens, there's joy and beauty and comfort and humility on all sides of it. Because the guy will turn around and say, this is great. I don't deserve this, but I appreciate it. And a man will work harder as a result. One of the problems we have is that men no longer have to work hard to get girls.
Bingo.
I have a future. I have a car. I have some prospects. I have a good career ahead of me. I have a trade where we're 500,000 electricians short right now, not counting what we need in the future. There's data centers shortage everywhere. I'm on a good career path. I will provide for you. I will protect you. You'll have a good life with me, and I will practically worship. You'll never have it better. Today, none of that happens. You can always find a girl who's willing to put out today, or is trying to increase her numbers on TikTok. There's a great deal of confusion. And as a result, we're headed exactly down the path that J.D. Unwin talks about in his book, Sex and Culture. I mentioned that before too. Every society where where more than less women have sex before marriage, at the outset, 3 generations, and that society collapses every time. He did a study of every society in history that had any written records whatsoever. It's a comprehensive study, and it ends the same way every time. Now look at Europe. You know, what is it? Collectively, Europe has a 1.3 birth rate. No civilization has ever come back from a birth rate of 1.9. You need a 2.21 to sustain the birth rate of your nation. at 1.9, you can't come back. That means Europe's going to be gone in our lifetime. Western civilization in Europe will disappear in the next 20 to 30 years. It won't slowly dissipate. It'll be gone. And already in London, they're saying, London is brown now. Yeah, we're taking over London. This is the thing. Well, the British did it to themselves. The Spanish and the Portuguese and the French and the Germans are doing it to themselves. They're trying to do it here. We're resisting it, thank God. Because if it's us in Europe, where else are you going to find Western civilization? Which has value. Western civilization has value. It's born the scientific method. It's born so many good things, which have advanced comfort and healing and health in world society. Where are you going to find it? Australia? Australia is the most draconian of all the Western countries by far. Israel has more vaccinations per person than any for the COVID, and they're starting to die off now.
Yes.
Why are Israeli young men and women suddenly getting sick, suddenly having heart attacks, suddenly having strokes? Oh my gosh, we can't figure it out. Well, it's not that hard to figure it out. You just don't want to admit it. You did it to yourself. Now, this is why humility is so important. A man and a woman have to do their jobs and present themselves to God, submit themselves to God. But I don't mean submit in the sense of I have a boot on my throat. I mean submit yourselves to God as you would submit a bill of sale, as you would submit something submit a gift to someone. We have to submit ourselves to God. We have to offer ourselves to God and understand that He's got a good plan. He had a great design. It actually works. And the closer we get to Christ-likeness, the closer we get to purity, humility, modesty, which is all the virtues of the Virgin and all the virtues of the church, the closer we get to that, the stronger our families are, the purer our intellect is. I'm going to speak a little bit noetically here, but the more integrated the person is. And the advantage, frankly, is that a person develops, if they're being formed in the Orthodox faith, they're attending services, they're reading the scriptures, they're praying the canonical prayers, is they're naturally, without willing it, they slowly start to become holy. They advance in the spiritual life without pushing to advance. It all takes place by itself. They're reintegrating themselves because they're disintegrated, and they gain what I think what the theologians call a sensus fide. There's a sense of the faith which is so profound that a lot of our little old ladies have it. They may not know what's wrong about what you're talking about, but they know it's not right. And you see a great deal of this with people who've received a great deal of Orthodox formation. They'll say, that just doesn't sound right to me. They don't study theologically. They're
right.
not, they read the Bible, but they don't study it. They attend the services. They're deeply involved in prayer, and that prayer has formed them. But they have developed this sense of faith. Now, I'm not saying that their conscience is perfect and pure and clean, and everything they're guessing about is correct. That's not what's going on here, because the formation in the Orthodox way takes time, and it's very deliberate, and it's done by people who don't resist the very, very basic practices of our faith. They don't pick and choose. There's no cafeteria orthodoxy. There's no boutique orthodoxy. You do what the church prescribes, and lo and behold, the church's prescription itself heals, cures, forms the interior person into what God intended it to be, so that you don't guess anymore. The illumination is quicker and easier. And again, very often you just have this sense that something's not right about some novelty. And you're correct. You may not be able to put your finger on it, but let's face it. Unless you're a teacher of the faith, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're not necessarily called to stand up and defend the faith. Your job is to say, this isn't the orthodoxy of the ages. That's where the lay people are the strongest defenders of the faith. Their answer is always the same. We're just not going to do it. You throw the bishops in the river and then you go on from there.
We've got some new shirts, Counterflow with Buck Johnson on the front pocket, on the back. A beautiful graphic with, of course, dissident voices and unapproved opinions. You can see this on the YouTube version of the show, of course. We're putting the graphic up now. $30 flat fee. $30 gets you the t-shirt. The PayPal address is buck@counterflowpodcast.com. That is my PayPal. You can send $30 that method. Send me your address and the size you want. We have sizes small through 2XL. Again, sizes small through 2XL. Go to PayPal, $30 buck@counterflowpodcast.com. Give me your address in there and the t-shirt will be yours. I have some questions about, some examples sort of some inversions of what we've been talking about, whether it's men maybe not giving the women the attention that they seek. And you start to see, I've seen this even amongst married people I know, where the female is putting selfies day after day after day on social media. And before we had this talk, I even would think instinctively, maybe like, does your husband not say that you're pretty and you're wanting everyone else to say that? Then you, of course, see men do the gym selfies and stuff like that. I've seen. There's actually a gym in Austin that friends had gone to that said that was an Instagram gym. Every woman in there had a ring light. Every guy was in the mirror. So you see that on the man side. But then I've heard young men many times tell me, I don't trust women. I think I could just be a monk, or I just don't need to get married because you approach them and then they bitch at you about something, and modern women scare me. So that's an inverted, it's like this fear that young men have. Where did this come from? And what are your thoughts on this sort of these inversions that we see?
Oh, it's so obvious. Feminism killed chivalry. No question. A young man opens the door for a pretty girl. I can open that myself, You don't need to do that for me. Well, nobody expects to be yelled at for doing a good deed, especially when you're a younger man. You're like, so what have you learned? You learn not to open doors. And you learn that any compliment is automatically considered flirting.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Can't you just pay somebody a compliment? You're the prettiest cashier I've seen today. You have to disclaim, I'm not flirting with you.
Yes.
I'm just paying you a compliment. What a terrible thing to be able to do. It's all been boiled down to its nastiest minimalism. And as a result, once again, guys don't know what to do. I talk to a girl, she yells at me. I ask her a question, she tells me it's none of my business. I make a remark about something and she barks at me for having the wrong political opinions. There's no engagement of anything, right? So guys saying, I don't need this in my life. I don't need constant conflict. The women are starting to learn that there for the last 20 years, there's been this sort of ism. I need a man that can handle me.
Yes.
I need a man that can handle me and handle my things. And no man, no matter who he is and how much money he has, wants to handle any woman. Okay? We want women to bring beauty and peace to our lives. We walk out the door, and every man knows this. Women don't know it, though. Every man knows that the minute you walk out the door, you are in constant competition with every other man. Friendly competition most of the time, but you're in competition in everything.
Uh-huh.
You are constantly competing. And what does that mean? Most of the time you're losing.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay. Look, I'm not 6.5 feet tall. I don't have giant levers. I'm never going to be a pro athlete. I can deal with that. In fact, I tell people at the chalice, Father John has short arms. You have to come close to the chalice. Consider me like the T-Rex priest. I don't have very long arms. Got to get really close. I said, but you know that you're not at that level, right? You can't, no matter what you do, you can't accomplish that. So you try to accomplish other things. Women don't understand that. They really don't. They don't have any idea that we are constantly competing and as a result, most of the time losing. Now, the reason we continue to compete is because we know that people like Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan, all the real champs, will tell you they missed more shots in practice than most of their competitors have made. They're willing to practice so much. They're willing to get out there so much that their losses far excel their wins. But that's what makes them winners.
Yes. I also think, just to interrupt really quick, I had seen a couple of years ago this online amongst men, like, I don't watch sports. It's too woke and all this stuff. I get all the noise around modern sports, but I think there's an instinct that's natural for us to appreciate watching sports because it's to see a man be better than everyone else at his craft is appealing to us.
Absolutely. Men admire prowess. When we go to an action movie, the hero might take off his shirt for the women. The men don't care. Yeah. What we want to see is the expert sword play. We want to see the skill of the fighter, which writers who don't have any fighting experience, they really don't understand how someone who's actually been trained in boxing, actually been trained to fight, how far over the head of everybody else they really are. They think, well, I can throw a punch, I can throw a right. And no, there's footwork that they're going to destroy you so fast. You have no idea. You have no idea what you stepped into. And those are basic levels of skill. When men watch hockey, it's not because we want to see a fight. It's men doing incredibly beautiful things just to get a little puck in the net, and there's a guy standing there in heavy pads to stop it, and yet they still score. It's a little bit of vicarious living for us,
sure,
but at the same time, they're almost always team sports, and we also know that if we sit alone in our apartment, working from our computer, ordering DoorDash, watching porn until we can buy our computer doll, we don't have a support network. We think we don't need one, but the reality is we do. We need a team. Everybody needs a team. Everybody needs a posse that's there for them, that helps them get through the tough parts of life. The difficulty is that we don't need that for surviving in an urban environment anymore. Right. People don't have to be careful where it's returning that way. We got to be careful where you walk, who you talk to. You never know what's going to happen. But by and large, you don't need a group of guys to be with for safety. And I don't mean individual safety. I mean for the safety of the area. Neighborhood watches are good for this. HOAs are terrible for this. HOAs reward the guys who are the male Karens.
Yes.
And those insecure guys that can't make it any other way, gives them control of other people's lives. It's like HR. It's a ridiculous department.
Yes.
But women always are in charge of HR. You notice that?
Yes.
Yeah, because they like to passive aggressively execute justice. and it gives them a passive aggressive form of experience of power. This is bad for everybody. It's bad for them because they're constantly judging and usually judging poorly. A good HR person, of course, I'm not talking about that. A person who's really good at HR is weeding out people based on their merits and finding the right person. But we also know stereotypes are based on reality many times. And some of these HR Karens are the worst. They're the worst people, and they've gotten the worst job they could possibly have so that they can spread the maximum amount of emotional carnage. And that's very satisfying to them. No beauty in that.
Right.
They're not creating beauty at all. This is contrary to the nature. It's a result of the fall, in my opinion. Is causing pain rather than nursing, and healing it.
Yes, I'm going to speak. I think it's scheduled next week to. I don't know if you know Rachel Wilson, but she wrote a book on the origins of feminism. She's an Orthodox woman, and I hope the interview is going to work out, because otherwise I'm spoiling something that won't happen. But I wanted to talk to her about this, and I can ask you in closing here. We have a few more minutes, but there's always been this argument, like the chicken and the egg thing. Well, early feminism was good because these men were abusive, and you've seen in the 40s and 50s, the husbands would come home and beat the wives, and so women needed something to like say, well, I can stand on my own or something like this. And I always feel like that's some sort of, not propaganda, but maybe it is propaganda, stereotype that's sort of arisen through feminist preaching. It's like, well, we're doing this because, and then that sort of gets inverted. But do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly things like that did happen. But by and large, women weren't unhappy or dissatisfied with their lives in the 50s and 60s. Women, in large numbers, went to university, got educations. What you didn't have is every girl going to college, so that maybe they had to have remedial classes just to stay in the college. You didn't have stuff like that. You had women doctors, you had women scientists, engineers, you had all those things. But these are the women who actually excelled, and they just weren't average, trying to get a degree so that they could find a job in management somewhere. Of course, I agree with equal work for equal pay. And that's been the canard that they're always trying to follow. But they have to take into account, and they never do, women statistically work less than men do. They work less hours than men do. They work over a shorter period of time than men do on a job, because they get married, they get pregnant, or they move. Something else is going on. So in terms of statistics, women are being paid as the same as men. That's not a question. But now you have a great situation where now if men and women are both working, they're both being heavily taxed. You can tax them even more. Mm-hmm. Now it's impossible for a nuclear family. It's not impossible. It's very difficult to live on one income. Uh-huh. And they did that on purpose. The idea is not to destroy the family, it's to destroy femininity.
Yeah.
Let me say this is important. People often say the advertisers use sex to sell. That is not true. They use women to sell. Women are the highest form of creation. They weren't made out of dirt like us. They weren't made out of nothing like animals. They were made out of the highest substance. They were made out of man. And they give birth. They create life. They bear life. The devil hates them most of all. Plus, he got his butt kicked by a teenage girl. You know, it's one thing to say, oh, sure, I lost, but it took God to defeat me. It's another thing to say a 16-year-old virgin had her foot on his throat, and it doesn't matter what playground you're on. You get beat up by a girl, it's not. You're general interest. He lost to the virgin. She said yes to God and no to the devil. And as a result, the devil's power was overthrown. But he's never forgotten that. So the way you attack women is you divide, right? You divide them from their protectors. I'm a strong, independent woman. You don't say that about me. I can do it myself. And you erode what is strong about women, that they bring beauty, they create life, that they have the power to settle men down, to calm the excessive energy that we pour into ourselves and to each other that damages ourselves. They settle that down just by their presence, at least until recent. Guys are different around women. And there's nothing you can do about it. That's being a guy. Women used to be different around men. That's just being a girl. Luckily, women are enjoying being girls again. Luckily, there are some women that actually want not just to be married, but want to be wives. The advantage of this is, although they may be a minority for now, but it will grow, is it will force men to be men again. They won't be able to be perpetual boys, sitting at home, not interacting with anybody except online, and thinking that they have all their needs met. That's not satisfying to the male psyche. It's a psychosis. It's Peter Pan psychosis. You don't ever have to grow up. Nobody's telling me what to do. Certainly no woman. And I can't tell what a woman is anyway. It will force men to cast aside all this nonsense, to stop worrying about being called racist, homophobic, fascist, bigoted. Who cares what you call me? You don't know me anyway. None of it matters. But at least I know what I'm doing. At least I know who I am. And I'm going to be God's man. And God will send me a wife. God will send me a wife. We see it in the scriptures, right? Abraham sent servants back to his own people to find a spouse. He didn't want one of these pagan women because he knows what pagan women do. And we have forgotten what pagan women do. They destroy the fabric of the family. So that's when we talk about feminism, the purpose of feminism was never equal rights or equal pay for equal work. It was to destroy femininity and thereby destroy humanity. No question. Because, the word symbolical means to bring two things together. The word diabolical means to separate two things. It doesn't mean demonic. It means it separates. It divides. Diabolical things divide. Christian things unite. We have to be Christians in that way. And the Christian men have got to be willing to stand up and say, no, I don't care about your strong, independent womanhood. I respect you as a fellow being, a fellow person. Ontologically, we are equal. But everyone exists in a hierarchy. We are all hierarchically submissive. Always. To everyone. Everyone has a hierarchy they're involved in. You don't have to like it. You don't have to admit it. But that's the reality. The sooner a man realizes that he knows his place in a hierarchy, he can ascend it if he wants to. But that's the beginning of the paterfamilias. That's the beginning of the Christian household. Is a man who knows what that is.
Yes.
And knows his job is to not just be the father of his offspring, but to be the father of the family.
Yes, well put. And just one closing note, leftism to me is a revolt against nature because it tries to flatten hierarchy into one equal line, which is impossible to do. And that's why you see all these inversions and demonic things that go along with leftism because it's against nature. But I can do a whole other series of podcasts on that.
Oh, absolutely. And let me add to that. Ask any former leftist. It's not just against nature. It's specifically against God.
Yes, correct.
And doggone Jesus, he came as a man.
Yes.
What in the world can we do with that? So Christianity is obviously a big problem.
Yes. Father John, thank you for doing this. Is there anything on the way out you want to plug, website for the church or anything that you've got?
Not really. I was doing my own podcast, Ecclesiasm, for a while. I haven't done that for a while. I'm actually preparing to start doing online faith lessons for homeschoolers, anybody that's interested, really. But my online catechism was the first pre-recorded catechism in the world, I guess. It's still in use, but people appreciate a lot of live interaction. So I'm preparing to do that, and I hope that if people are interested, that they will keep an eye out, pay attention, or at least spread the news to their Christian friends who are parents. Kids are capable of learning a lot very easily, and we want to make it easy for the parents also. You don't have to do everything yourself. You can, and you don't have to hope that 40 minutes every Sunday is enough to counter everything else that kids are receiving. And let me explain. Last week for my homily, I've claimed for years that I could teach people things very quickly, that I could teach everybody the names of the 12 apostles in 2 minutes in a way they would never forget. So I did it for my whole parish. And of course it works. I know what I'm doing. I'm hoping that something like this will be of a value to Orthodox Christian parents or any Christian parents that just want to make sure their kids are not taking on the moral corruption of sometimes even their own religious tradition, but instead good biblical virtue, value, and knowledge. And that's what I'm hoping to do. So thanks for inviting me, Buck. You're a great host. You should tell me to pipe down once in a while more often. But I appreciate you, and you're wildly popular for a very good reason.
I appreciate you. Thanks for your time, Father. All right. I hope you guys got something out of that. And of course, next week, I'm waiting on 100% accurate confirmation. But the plan is, like I mentioned there towards the end of that interview, to have Rachel Wilson back on the show. It's been several years since I've had Rachel on, and we will talk some more about this sort of subject in and around femininity, feminism, masculinity, red pill, manosphere, business, all of these things, because I think getting an Orthodox perspective on it is refreshing. There's a lot of static and noise out there. Smash that like button, as the kids say. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Find us in the Telegram group. Follow me on X at BuckRebel, BuckRebel. Follow me on Instagram. Any of those things. I'm not big on advertising myself, but I suppose I should get these things out there at the end of this episode. Until next week, you guys have a good one.
Like the sound of the Counterflow Podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.